I never thought my son would be capable of something like this. Not Liam. Not the little boy I raised after his father died. The one who used to curl up next to me during thunderstorms. The one whose scraped knees I bandaged countless times over the years. Not the young man whose medical school graduation I attended with tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed with pride. But as I stared at the empty spaces in my jewelry box where my mother's emerald necklace, my grandmother's diamond earrings, and my wedding rings once rested, I had to face the truth. They were just sitting there, Mom. It's not like you ever wore them, Liam said when I confronted him, his voice eerily calm as he leaned against the doorframe of my bedroom. Ashley's family needed help. They were going to lose their house. Those jewels were my inheritance, Liam. They were meant to stay in our family, I said, my voice trembling. I was 62 years old and had been a widow for 20 years. Those jewels were not just valuable items. They were physical connections to my past, to the women in my family who had come before me. You had no right to take them without asking me. I knew you wouldn't understand. You've always been so attached to things, he sighed, with the dismissive tone that had become more frequent since he married Ashley 3 years ago. Anyway, it's done now. They're gone. I tried to steady my breathing. How much did you get for them? Maybe we can buy them back. Liam straightened up, a flash of something. Was it guilt? Crossing his face before his expression hardened again. It doesn't matter. The money's been spent. 2 days later, I discovered exactly how that money had been spent when Ashley's mother, Cynthia, pulled into my driveway in a brand new Mercedes convertible. I stood at my kitchen window, watching her run her manicured fingers over the gleaming hood while Ashley clapped her hands with excitement. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with calculations. The emerald necklace alone had been appraised at $40,000 just 5 years ago. The complete set must have fetched at least $100,000. For a car? A luxury car for a woman who had never worked a day in her life while I had spent 35 years as a pediatrician, working holidays and weekends to ensure Liam had everything he needed? When I questioned Liam the next morning, his response shattered me. Look, Mom, I don't need to justify how we help Ashley's family, he snapped. That's what you're here for, to support us, to help us. Isn't that what family does? Family doesn't steal from each other, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not stealing when it's going to be mine someday anyway, he shot back, and then immediately looked like he wanted to take the words back. I recoiled as if he'd struck me. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what my son had become, or perhaps what he had always been beneath the surface, and I had been too blind to see it. That evening, I sat alone in my study, surrounded by framed photographs chronicling my life, my wedding day, Liam's birth, his first steps, his graduation, the day he opened his medical practice. And now, at 62, I was forced to confront the fact that the son I had given everything to saw me primarily as a resource to be exploited. My late husband, Donald, had always warned me that I spoiled Liam too much. He needs to understand the value of things, Brooklyn, he would say. The value of work and sacrifice. But after Donald died of a heart attack when Liam was only 12, I compensated for his absence by giving our son everything I could. Maybe Donald had been right all along. I opened my laptop and checked my bank accounts. Over the past year, I had loaned Liam and Ashley nearly $50,000 for home renovations that never seemed to materialize. I had paid for their 2-week vacation to Greece as a second honeymoon gift. I had agreed to co-sign for their new SUV. I took off my reading glasses and rubbed my eyes. When had I become an ATM rather than a mother? When had my relationship with my son devolved into transactions rather than affection? The next day, Liam and Ashley announced they were going on another vacation, this time to the Maldives for 3 weeks. We really need this break, Ashley said, not meeting my eyes. Liam's been working so hard. But that sounds wonderful, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded while my heart raced with a plan forming in my mind. When do you leave? Next Saturday, Liam answered, looking relieved that I wasn't arguing or questioning them. You'll watch the house while we're gone, right, Brooklyn? Ashley asked, though it wasn't really a question. Of course, I nodded, smiling. Don't worry about a thing. After they left, I sat down with a notepad and made a list of all the places I had wanted to visit throughout my life but never had. Paris, the Grand Canyon, the Great Barrier Reef, Machu Picchu, Africa, specifically Kenya, where a colleague ran a medical clinic for children. Places Donald and I had planned to see together in our retirement, before cancer stole that future from us. I had put aside those dreams to raise my son, to build my medical practice, to be responsible. I had delayed my own joy, thinking there would always be time later. But now, watching my son and his wife pack designer clothes for their third luxury vacation of the year, funded by my inheritance, I realized how foolish I had been. That night, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, the second was to a real estate agent, and the third was to my old medical school friend, Dr. Sarah Winters, who ran the children's clinic in Nairobi. Are you serious, Brooklyn? Sarah asked when I explained what I wanted to do. You really want to come here? It's not exactly a luxury retirement. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, I replied, feeling a sense of certainty that had eluded me for years. I need to do something meaningful. Something for myself. Well, we could certainly use another pediatrician, Sarah said, her voice warming. And there's someone here I think you'd like to meet. Another Dr. James. He's been asking about you ever since I showed him that photo from our reunion. Sarah, I'm not looking for romance, I laughed, though the idea wasn't entirely unwelcome. I'm looking for redemption. Why can't you have both? She asked. The day before Liam and Ashley were set to leave, I withdrew $100,000 from my retirement fund, exactly the amount I estimated they had gotten for my jewelry. It would cost me in penalties, but some things were worth more than money. Some lessons were priceless. As I watched Liam pack his expensive luggage into their car, I wondered if he would even care about what I was planning to do. Would he be angry? Hurt? Or would he simply see it as an inconvenience? We'll call you when we land, he said, giving me a quick, perfunctory hug. Ashley simply waved from the passenger seat. As they drove away, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and liberation. My son might have sold my past without permission, but he couldn't sell my future. Not unless I let him. I watched until their car disappeared around the corner, then returned to the house to finish packing my own bags. 3 weeks would give me more than enough time. What Liam didn't know was that when he returned, expecting to find his complacent mother waiting with open arms and an open wallet, he would instead find an empty house, a sold sign in the front yard, and a simple note, "Help yourself." The morning after Liam and Ashley left, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. I moved through the house with purpose, sorting through my belongings, deciding what to keep, what to donate, and what to sell. Each decision felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My friend Janet came over to help, her eyes wide with disbelief as I explained what had happened and what I was planning to do. "Brooklyn, are you sure about this?" she asked, folding one of my sweaters and placing it in a cardboard box labeled "Donate." "This seems so extreme." "What's extreme is having your own son sell your family heirlooms without permission," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "What's extreme is being treated like an ATM instead of a mother." Janet sighed, her face softening with concern. "I've been telling you for years that Liam was taking advantage of you. But this, selling your house, moving to Kenya, that's a huge step." "It's not forever," I assured her, though part of me wondered if it might be. "I've rented a small apartment downtown for when I come back to visit. But I need this, Janet. I need to remember who I am outside of being Liam's mother and Donald's widow." "And what about this James person Sarah mentioned?" Janet raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing at her lips. I felt a blush creep up my neck. "That's hardly the point of all this." "Maybe not, but it doesn't hurt, does it?" she teased. By the end of the week, the house was nearly empty. The real estate agent had found a buyer willing to close quickly. A young family with 2 small children who reminded me of Liam and me when we first moved in after Donald died. I had donated most of the furniture to a women's shelter and packed only what meant the most to me into storage. On my last night in the house, I sat alone on the floor of what had once been our family living room. surrounded by echoes and memories. I could almost hear Donald's laughter, see toddler Liam racing his toy cars across the hardwood floors. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I being too harsh? Too impulsive? Then I remembered Liam's words. "That's what you're here for." And the doubt evaporated. I wasn't abandoning my son. I was teaching him that relationships must be based on respect and love, not convenience and exploitation. I was also finally putting myself first. The next morning, I signed the closing papers on the house. The proceeds would be divided. Half into my retirement account, a quarter into a separate account for genuine emergencies that Liam might face in the future. Medical issues, not luxury cars or vacations, and the final quarter would fund my work at the clinic in Kenya. As the realtor handed me the check, she smiled warmly. "It's not often I see someone your age making such a bold change. It's inspiring." "My age?" I laughed. "I'm 62, not 92. I've still got plenty of life to live." My flight to Paris was scheduled for later that afternoon, the first stop on my journey. I'd given myself 2 weeks to visit some of the places Donald and I had dreamed of seeing together before continuing on to Kenya. 2 weeks to rediscover the woman I used to be, the one who had dreams and ambitions beyond raising a son and building a successful medical practice. Before heading to the airport, I made one final stop, at Liam and Ashley's house. I used my key to enter, placing it on the kitchen counter afterward. I left a thick manila envelope alongside it. Inside was a letter explaining my decision, copies of the documents showing the account I'd set up for emergencies, and the note I'd mentioned, "Help yourself," written in my neat, precise handwriting on monogram stationery that had been a gift from Liam years ago. I also left something else, a small, worn jewelry box containing a single item, the simple silver locket my mother had given me on my 16th birthday. It wasn't valuable, not in the way my other jewelry had been, but it was precious to me. Inside was a tiny photograph of Donald holding newborn Liam. It was the one piece of jewelry I had worn every day since Donald's death, a tangible connection to the two most important men in my life. Leaving it behind felt significant. Not a severance, but a reminder. A reminder to Liam of the mother I had been, of the family we had been before greed and entitlement had corrupted our relationship. Whether he would understand the gesture was another matter entirely. As I closed their front door for what might be the last time, I felt no regret, only a curious mixture of sadness and anticipation. Paris was everything I had imagined and more. I spent my days wandering the streets, visiting museums, and sitting in cafes watching the world go by. For the first time in decades, I was answerable to no one but myself. No patients to see, no son to worry about, no responsibilities except to my own happiness. On my third day there, sitting at a small table outside a cafe near the Seine, I called Sarah in Nairobi. "How's the City of Light?" she asked, her voice crackling slightly over the international connection. "Beautiful," I replied, watching a couple stroll hand in hand along the riverbank. "But I'm ready for something more meaningful than playing tourist." "Well, we're certainly ready for you here," Sarah said. "And James keeps asking when you're arriving. You didn't show him more photos of me, did you?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Just the ones from the medical conference last year," Sarah laughed. "Don't worry, he's not expecting some 20-something. He's 65 himself, you know." After Paris came Rome, then a brief visit to the Greek islands. Each place was beautiful, each experience enriching. But by the end of the second week, I found myself eager to get to Kenya, to start the next chapter of my life. It was during my last night in Santorini, watching the sunset paint the white buildings in shades of gold and pink, that my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. "Mom?" Liam's voice was tight with anger. "What the hell have you done?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Hello, Liam. I take it you're back from your vacation." "Vacation? Are you kidding me? I come home to find out you've sold our family home? Left me some cryptic note? What is this? Some kind of midlife crisis?" "I think I'm a bit old for a midlife crisis," I replied calmly. "And yes, I sold the house. My house, to be precise. The one I paid for with my income as a doctor. But why? Where are you? Where's all our stuff?" His voice cracked slightly, and for a moment I heard the little boy who used to cry when he couldn't find his favorite toy. "Your things are in storage," I said. I left the information in the envelope with my note. As for why, I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Let's just say that when you took my inheritance without asking, you taught me an important lesson about value, about what truly matters." "This is about the jewelry?" he scoffed. "Mom, those were just things. Just like the house is just a thing." "Exactly," I replied. "Just things. Like your mother-in-law's Mercedes. Just a thing. The difference is, those things you sold were not yours to sell. They represented my history, my family." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, in a smaller voice, "Where are you going to live?" "I've rented a small apartment downtown for when I'm in the country," I explained. "But for the next 6 months I'll be in Kenya working at a children's medical clinic." "Kenya?" he sputtered. "Mom, you can't be serious. It's dangerous there. What about your health? What about—" "My health is excellent, as you well know," I cut him off. "And I was a doctor for 35 years, Liam. I think I can handle a medical clinic. But what about us? What about your family?" The question hung in the air between us. Thousands of miles apart, yet connected by blood and history and complicated love. "That," I said softly, "is exactly what I'm trying to figure out." As I hung up the phone, the last rays of the Santorini sun disappeared beneath the horizon, leaving the sky in that magical state between day and night, between ending and beginning. Tomorrow I would board a plane to Nairobi, to a new life I had never anticipated but now embraced with open arms. I wondered if Liam would understand eventually. I wondered if I would meet this James and feel something stir in my heart again after so many years alone. I wondered if 6 months would stretch into a year, or more. But most of all, I wondered why it had taken me so long to remember that I was more than just a mother, more than just a widow. I was Brooklyn Lewis, and at 62 years old, I was finally, truly, waking up. The next morning, as I waited to board my flight to Nairobi, my phone pinged with a text message. I expected it to be from Janet, checking in. Instead, it was from a number I didn't recognize. The message contained just 5 words and a photograph that made my blood run cold. "You'll regret this, Mother. Promise." The photo was of my silver locket, the one I had left for Liam, broken into pieces on what appeared to be a concrete floor. I stared at my phone screen, my fingers trembling. The broken locket lay scattered like my heart, each piece a reminder of the son I thought I knew. For a moment, I considered canceling everything, running back home to fix whatever had broken between us. The airport noises faded around me as I struggled to breathe. Then anger replaced shock. That locket had survived 46 years, through my mother's battle with cancer, through my marriage to Donald, through raising Liam. Now it lay destroyed because my son couldn't handle the consequences of his own actions. I took a screenshot of the message, blocked the number, and boarded my flight with renewed determination. The old Brooklyn might have turned back, might have apologized for asserting her independence, but I wasn't that woman anymore. The flight to Nairobi was long, giving me plenty of time to think. I had texted Janet about the message from Liam, asking her to check on him, but not to tell him where I was staying in Kenya. "He needs time to cool down," I wrote. "We both do." When we finally landed at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, the humid heat hit me like a wall as I exited the plane. Standing in the arrival area was Sarah, her silver hair cut in a practical bob, her skin tanned from years under the African sun. Beside her stood a tall man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair, wearing khaki pants and a light blue button-down shirt. "Brooklyn!" Sarah rushed forward, embracing me. "You actually did it! I still can't believe it." "Neither can I admitted, returning her hug. Sarah pulled back, gesturing to the man beside her. "This is James Mitchell. James, meet Brooklyn Lewis, the best pediatrician I've ever known and the woman I've been telling you about for months." James stepped forward, his handshake firm and warm. "Sarah's praise has been effusive," he said, his British accent softening the words. "I was beginning to think you couldn't possibly live up to it, but I see she might have understated things." I felt my cheeks warm, suddenly aware of how rumpled I must look after 20 hours of travel. "Don't believe everything she tells you," I replied, especially the part about me being a morning person. James laughed, a deep, pleasant sound. Duly noted. Now, let's get your bags and head to the clinic. You must be exhausted. The drive from the airport to the clinic took us through Nairobi's bustling streets, and then out into more rural areas. I watched through the window as the landscape changed, trying to absorb everything at once. The clinic is about 40 minutes outside the city, Sarah explained from the front passenger seat while James drove. We serve several villages in the area. It's basic compared to what you're used to, but we've got the essentials. And how many children do you typically see? I asked, sliding back into the comfortable role of doctor, pushing thoughts of Liam and the broken locket from my mind. Anywhere from 20 to 50 a day, James answered, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Mostly preventative care, vaccinations, malnutrition cases, some more serious issues that we try to stabilize before transferring to the hospital in Nairobi. We're desperately understaffed, Sarah added. Having another pediatrician, especially one with your experience, is going to make a world of difference. As we turned onto a dirt road, a simple compound came into view. Several one-story buildings surrounded a central courtyard where children played under the watchful eyes of women I assumed were nurses or caregivers. Home sweet home, Sarah said as James parked the vehicle. At least for the next 6 months. Or longer, James added, giving me a warm smile. If we can convince you to stay. The next few days passed in a blur of introductions, orientations, and adjustments. The clinic was indeed basic compared to my practice back home, but there was something profoundly satisfying about the work. Each child I treated, each grateful parent, each small victory reminded me why I had become a doctor in the first place. My accommodations were simple. A small room with a bed, desk, and private bathroom in a building shared with other medical staff. The windows looked out onto a garden where birds I couldn't name sang unfamiliar songs at dawn. James lived in a similar room across the courtyard. We often found ourselves sharing coffee in the early mornings before the clinic opened, talking about our lives, our careers, the places we'd been, and the dreams we still harbored. I learned that he had lost his wife to malaria 5 years earlier while they were working together in Tanzania. Caroline loved it here, he told me one morning, his eyes distant with memory. Couldn't imagine living anywhere else after our first year. Said it got into your blood, becomes part of you. And has it? Become part of you? I asked. He looked at me, his expression softening. Yes, though I'm finding there's still room for new things to become part of me too. 2 weeks into my stay, I received an email from Janet. Liam had come to her house, demanding to know where I was. She had kept her promise not to tell him specifics, but had assured him I was safe and doing meaningful work. He seemed lost, Brooklyn, she wrote. Angry, yes, but also confused. He asked me why you wouldn't just talk to him, work things out. I reminded him about the jewelry, about how he had violated your trust, but he kept saying it wasn't about the stuff. And I think there's more going on with him than you know. I stared at the screen of my laptop, conflicting emotions washing over me. Part of me wanted to reach out to Liam, to try to understand what was happening with him. But another part remembered the broken locket, the years of being taken for granted, the casual cruelty of his words. That's what you're here for. That evening, I found myself walking with James along a path that led to a small hill overlooking the clinic. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, casting long shadows across the landscape. Penny for your thoughts, James said as we reached the top of the hill. You've been quiet all afternoon. I hesitated, then found myself telling him everything. About Donald's death, about raising Liam alone, about the sold jewelry and the luxury car, about my escape and the broken locket. Once I started, I couldn't stop, the words tumbling out like water through a broken dam. James listened without interruption, his face thoughtful. When I finally fell silent, he took my hand in his, a gesture so unexpected and yet so natural that tears sprang to my eyes. You did the right thing, he said simply. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even when, especially when, it's painful. But what if I've lost him forever? I whispered, giving voice to my deepest fear. If your relationship can't survive him being held accountable for his actions, then it wasn't a healthy relationship to begin with, James replied. Give him time. Give yourself time. We stood there as the sun disappeared and the stars began to emerge, his hand warm around mine. In that moment, with the African night spreading out before us, I felt both further from and closer to home than I ever had before. The next morning, I woke to the sound of urgent voices. Throwing on clothes, I rushed out to find the clinic in a flurry of activity. A bus carrying school children had overturned on the road to Nairobi, and the injured were being brought to our clinic for initial treatment. For the next 12 hours, I worked alongside Sarah, James, and the rest of the staff, treating everything from minor cuts to serious head injuries. We stabilized the most critical cases for transport to Nairobi and handled the rest ourselves. The work was exhausting but exhilarating, requiring every bit of skill and experience I had acquired over my long career. It was after midnight when the last child was treated and sleeping comfortably. I stepped outside, bone-tired but filled with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. James joined me, handing me a cup of tea. "You were magnificent in there," he said. "I've never seen anyone so calm under pressure." It felt good, I admitted. To be needed for my skills, not just my checkbook. He chuckled, then grew serious. "Brooklyn, His words were cut off by the sound of an approaching vehicle. Headlights swept the darkness as a taxi pulled up to the clinic entrance. The door opened, and a figure stepped out, silhouetted against the headlights. My heart stopped as the figure moved into the light cast by the clinic's porch lamp. "Mom?" Liam stood there, looking exhausted and rumpled from travel, his expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. "We need to talk." Behind him, emerging from the same taxi, was Ashley, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her face streaked with what looked like dried tears. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "It's important." Time seemed to freeze as I stared at my son and daughter-in-law standing in the African moonlight. James's hand found the small of my back, a silent gesture of support that gave me strength. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Liam stepped forward. "Janet didn't tell us, if that's what you're worried about. But you left a brochure for this clinic in your desk drawer. It wasn't hard to figure out." I nodded, suddenly aware of how disheveled I must look after the chaotic day of emergency treatments. "You've come a long way for a conversation that could have happened over the phone. Some things need to be said in person," Liam replied, his gaze flickering to James before returning to me. James cleared his throat. "I'll give you some privacy. There's a small conference room inside you can use." He squeezed my shoulder gently before heading back toward the clinic. "Who's that?" Liam asked, a strange edge to his voice. "Dr. James Mitchell. He runs this clinic with Dr. Winters," I explained, choosing not to elaborate on our growing closeness. "Now, why don't we go inside? It's been a very long day, and I'm sure you're tired from your trip." I led them to the small room James had mentioned, closing the door behind us. The space was utilitarian: a table, some chairs, a whiteboard for staff meetings. Liam and Ashley sat on one side of the table, and I took a seat across from them, feeling oddly like I was in a negotiation. "First," Liam began, "I want to apologize for the locket. That was inexcusable." I was angry and I lashed out. Yes, it was inexcusable, I agreed, refusing to soften the blow. "That locket survived 46 years, including being worn by me every day after your father died. It contained the only picture I carried of you and him together." Guilt flashed across his face. "I know. I'm sorry. I was drunk, and that makes it better?" I interrupted, surprised by my own boldness. "Being drunk justifies destroying one of my most precious possessions?" "No," Liam admitted, looking down at his hands. "Nothing justifies that." Ashley placed her hand over his. "We didn't come here to fight, Brooklyn. We came because—" She looked at Liam, prompting him to continue. Liam took a deep breath. "We came because we need your help, but also because I need to explain some things." I folded my arms, waiting. Part of me wanted to say they had a lot of nerve, flying halfway around the world to ask for help after everything that had happened. But the mother in me, the part that had loved this boy from the moment I knew he existed, held back those words. Ashley's family. Liam started, then stopped, seeming to search for the right words. They've been using us, for years. But I didn't see it, or didn't want to see it, until recently. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. My mother has a gambling problem. A serious one. The money for the house, the car, it all went to pay off her debts. But they just keep growing. She's been manipulating us, playing on my guilt, my sense of family obligation. Sound familiar? I said quietly. Liam flinched but nodded. That's why I came to understand what I've been doing to you. I've been treating you the same way Ashley's mother treats us. The jewelry, I prompted, needing to hear him say it. I took it without asking because I knew you'd say no, he admitted. I convinced myself it was justified because Ashley's family needed help. But the truth is, I was enabling her mother's addiction, just like you've been enabling my— He struggled with the word, my entitlement. I sat back, processing his words. There was a rawness to his confession that felt genuine, yet I'd been fooled before. And now you need my help again. Not financial help, Ashley interjected quickly. We need your guidance, your strength. We don't know how to break free from this cycle with my family. The irony isn't lost on me, Liam added with a humorless laugh, coming to ask you how to set boundaries when I've been steamrolling over yours for years. The exhaustion of the day was catching up with me. I rubbed my temples, trying to think clearly. Why now? What changed? Liam and Ashley exchanged a look. Show her, Ashley said softly. Liam pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then slid it across the table to me. On the screen was an ultrasound image. We're having a baby, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm going to be a father. And I suddenly realized I don't want to be the kind of parent who teaches my child that it's okay to exploit the people who love you. I stared at the grainy image, my first grandchild, and felt a complex wave of emotions wash over me. Joy, hope, lingering hurt, cautious optimism. Congratulations, I said softly, sliding the phone back. When are you due? December, Ashley replied, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. It's a boy. A grandson. Donald's grandson. The thought brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Mom, Liam said, leaning forward. I know I've hurt you. I know I can't undo what I've done. But I want to try to make things right. I want my son to know his grandmother, not just as someone who can give him things, but as the incredible, strong woman you are. The door opened, and Sarah poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got another emergency coming in. Brooklyn, we could use your help if you're up for it. I nodded, standing up. Of course. Liam, Ashley, we'll have to continue this conversation tomorrow. There are some empty staff quarters where you can rest tonight. Can we watch you work? Liam asked, surprising me. I mean, if it's not in the way. I've never really seen you as a doctor. Not since I was a kid and you let me play with your stethoscope. I hesitated, then nodded. Stay out of the way, and do exactly as you're told. For the next 3 hours, Liam and Ashley observed as our team treated children injured in a house fire in a nearby village. I forgot they were there as I fell into the familiar rhythm of triage, treatment, and care. It was only when things finally calmed down that I noticed Liam watching me with an expression I hadn't seen on his face in years. Respect. You're amazing at this, he said as I finally took a break, accepting a cup of coffee from James. I always knew you were a good doctor, but seeing you work like this— He shook his head in wonder. This is who I am, Liam, I replied. Not just your mother or Donald's widow, but Dr. Brooklyn Lewis. I spent years building a career I'm proud of, helping children, making a difference. That's why it hurt so much to be reduced to an ATM. Liam winced. I get that now. I really do. James, who had been quietly observing our interaction, spoke up. Brooklyn has been a godsend here. The children adore her, and the staff respects her expertise immensely. How long will you stay? Liam asked, looking between James and me with newfound awareness. I committed to 6 months initially, I replied. After that, I'm not sure. Will you come back for the birth? Ashley asked hesitantly. We'd really like you to be there. I met her gaze, seeing a vulnerability there I hadn't noticed before. Perhaps I had been so focused on Liam's betrayal that I hadn't really seen Ashley clearly. A young woman caught between her husband and her manipulative mother, now preparing for motherhood herself. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Later that night, after Liam and Ashley had gone to rest, I found myself back on the hilltop with James, the African stars brilliant above us. "They seem genuinely remorseful," James observed. "Especially your son." "Yes," I agreed. "But trust isn't rebuilt overnight." "Of course not," he said, taking my hand in what had become a familiar gesture. "But it's a start." I leaned against his shoulder, the events of the day catching up with me. I never expected any of this when I got on that plane 2 months ago. Not the clinic, not you, certainly not Liam showing up with an apology and news of a grandchild. James chuckled. "Life rarely follows our expectations. That's what makes it interesting." He paused, then added more seriously, "What will you do now? Will you go back with them?" I turned to face him, seeing the question behind the question in his eyes. "No. I made a commitment here, and I intend to honor it." "What happens after that?" I let the sentence hang between us, full of possibility. He lifted my hand to his lips, placing a gentle kiss on my knuckles. "I hope what happens after includes me." The moment was interrupted by the sound of running footsteps. One of the nurses appeared, breathless at the bottom of the hill. "Dr. Lewis! Dr. Mitchell! Come quickly!" she called up to us. "It's the American woman, your daughter-in-law. She's collapsed and bleeding heavily." James and I exchanged a horrified look before sprinting down the hill toward the clinic, my heart pounding with a new fear. I might have just found my way back to my son, just learned about my future grandchild, only to lose them both in this place so far from home. Time both slowed and accelerated as James and I raced back to the clinic. The warm African night that had felt so peaceful moments before now seemed oppressive, heavy with fear and urgency. We found Ashley on a bed in our small emergency room, pale and frightened, with Liam clutching her hand. Blood stained the sheets beneath her, and her face was contorted with pain. "What happened?" I asked, instantly shifting into doctor mode as I checked her pulse. "Sharp pain," Ashley gasped. "Then bleeding. The baby, please, save our baby." I nodded reassuringly, even as my mind raced through possible diagnoses, none of them good at only 20 weeks of pregnancy. "We're going to do everything we can." Sarah appeared with the portable ultrasound machine, our most advanced piece of equipment. "I've called for an emergency medical helicopter from Nairobi," she said quietly. "ETA 40 minutes. "That may not be soon enough," I replied under my breath, nodding toward Ashley's alarming blood loss. "We need to stabilize her now." For the next 30 minutes, we worked frantically. The ultrasound confirmed my fears. Placental abruption, a condition where the placenta separates from the uterine wall. It was severe, and both Ashley's life and the baby's hung in balance. "We need to get fluids into her," I ordered, starting an IV line myself while Sarah prepared blood for transfusion. James monitored the baby's heartbeat, his expression grave as he caught my eye. Liam stood helplessly nearby, his face ashen. "Mom," he whispered, sounding like a little boy again. "Please save them." In that moment, all the hurt between us faded into the background. He wasn't the son who had betrayed my trust. He was a frightened father-to-be watching his family's future slip away. And I wasn't a wronged mother seeking independence. I was a doctor with the skills to help. "Talk to her," I instructed Liam as I worked. "Keep her calm and focused." The minutes crawled by as we fought to stabilize Ashley. The baby's heartbeat weakened, then rallied, then weakened again. Ashley drifted in and out of consciousness. Outside, we heard the distant thrum of helicopter blades approaching. "Almost there," I told her, squeezing her hand. "Just hold on a little longer." As the medical team from Nairobi rushed in, I briefed them on Ashley's condition, impressed by their efficiency and expertise. They would airlift her to the hospital in Nairobi, where she could receive the advanced care she needed. "I'm going with her," Liam said as they prepared to move Ashley to the helicopter. I nodded, then surprised myself by saying, "So am I." James looked up sharply. "Brooklyn, she's my daughter-in-law," I said firmly. "And that's my grandchild. I need to be there." He held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Of course. I understand. The helicopter ride to Nairobi was tense, with the medical team monitoring Ashley constantly. Liam sat across from me, our knees almost touching in the confined space, his eyes never leaving his wife's face. I'm sorry, he said suddenly, his voice barely audible over the roar of the helicopter. For everything. The jewelry, the locket, taking you for granted. I know, I replied, reaching across to take his hand. We'll talk about all that later. Right now, let's focus on Ashley and the baby. At the hospital, Ashley was rushed into surgery. Liam and I found ourselves alone in the waiting room, the harsh fluorescent lights emphasizing the exhaustion on both our faces. How did we get here? Liam asked after a long silence, not just referring to the hospital. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw both the man he had become and the boy he had been. We both lost our way a bit, I said gently. After your father died, I tried to fill the void by giving you everything. Maybe that wasn't always what you needed. Liam nodded slowly. I never dealt with losing Dad. Not really. I just took and took, trying to fill a hole that couldn't be filled with things. And I let you, I admitted, because it was easier than facing my own grief, than building a new life without Donald. Like you're doing now? With that doctor? There was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. I felt a smile tug at my lips despite the circumstances. James. His name is James. And yes, I suppose I am. It's unexpected, but good. He seems like a decent guy, Liam said, surprising me. The way he looks at you, it reminds me of how Dad used to look at you. The simple observation brought tears to my eyes. He is a good man. Our conversation was interrupted by a surgeon entering the waiting room, still in scrubs. We both stood, hearts pounding. Mrs. Lewis? Mr. Lewis? The surgeon asked. Dr. Lewis, I corrected automatically, then held my breath. The surgeon smiled. Dr. Lewis, then. Your daughter-in-law is stable. We had to perform an emergency cesarean, but she's going to be fine. And the baby? Liam asked, his voice cracking. Your son is very small, just over a pound. But he's fighting. He's in the NICU and he has a long road ahead, but with the right care, we're cautiously optimistic. My knees nearly buckled with relief. A grandson, tiny and struggling, but alive. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, medical consultations, and quiet conversations. Ashley recovered slowly but steadily. The baby, whom they named Donald after his grandfather, faced the challenges typical of extreme prematurity. But day by day, he grew stronger. I split my time between the hospital and the clinic, unwilling to abandon either my family or my commitment to the children who needed me. James came to Nairobi whenever he could, his steady presence a comfort I hadn't realized how much I needed. One evening, as Liam and I sat beside Donald's incubator in the NICU, my son turned to me with an expression of newfound maturity. I've been thinking, he said, about what happens when you finish your 6 months here. I waited, curious where this was going. I know I have no right to ask you to give up your new life, he continued, but I was hoping, maybe you could divide your time. 3 months here, 3 months back home. Donald needs his grandmother, and so do I. I studied my son's face, seeing genuine humility there. What about Ashley's mother and the financial entanglements? Liam's expression hardened slightly. We've set boundaries, clear ones. No more money, no more enabling. She's in a gambling addiction program now, one of the conditions we set for her to be part of the baby's life. And you're okay with that? Setting conditions? He nodded firmly. I learned from the best. It took me losing you to understand the difference between helping and enabling. I reached out to touch the incubator, watching my tiny grandson's chest rise and fall with each precious breath. I'll think about it, I promised. Later that night, I sat with James on the balcony of his small Nairobi apartment, watching the city lights below us. Liam wants me to split my time, I told him. 6 months in Kenya, 6 months back home. James took a sip of his tea, his expression thoughtful. And what do you want, Brooklyn? The question was simple but profound. For so much of my life, what I wanted had taken a back seat to everyone else's needs and desires. I want to continue the work at the clinic, I've never felt more fulfilled professionally. And personally? James asked softly, his eyes meeting mine. I smiled, reaching for his hand. Personally, I found something here I never expected to find again after Donald died. Something I'm not ready to give up. So your answer is yes, then? To splitting your time? My answer is that I want a life that includes all the people I love, I replied. Liam, Donald, you, and myself. The self I rediscovered when I got on that plane 4 months ago. James lifted my hand to his lips. I think that can be arranged. I've been considering spending some time in the States myself. There are medical conferences, funding opportunities for the clinic. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, watching as Liam and Ashley settled baby Donald, now a thriving, chubby-cheeked 7-month-old, in the portable crib they had brought for their visit. My walls were decorated with photos, Donald as a newborn in the NICU, the children at the clinic in Kenya, James and me on a safari weekend, Liam, Ashley, and baby Donald at his christening. Next to these new memories hung one older photo in a simple silver frame, Donald, my late husband, holding newborn Liam. The original picture from my locket was gone, destroyed in a moment of anger, but Liam had found another copy in an old album and had it professionally restored as a peace offering. Not everything had been mended perfectly. There were still moments of tension, old hurts that sometimes resurfaced. Trust was being rebuilt slowly, one conversation, one honest exchange at a time. But as I watched my son gently tuck a blanket around his sleeping baby, I felt a profound sense of rightness. I had needed to leave to find myself again. Liam had needed to lose me to understand what he had taken for granted. And somehow, in the breaking and remaking of our relationship, we had both found strength we didn't know we possessed. James would be arriving tomorrow for a 2-week visit before we both returned to Kenya for my next 3-month rotation at the clinic. At 63, I had a career that fulfilled me, a family that was healing, a relationship that brought me joy, and, most importantly, a sense of my own worth that no one could take away. "Mom?" Liam called softly, gesturing me over. He's holding his head up. "Come see." I moved to join my family. The decision I had made on that painful day when I discovered my missing jewelry now seeming less like an ending and more like the beginning it had truly been. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what we're given, but what we find the courage to claim for ourselves.